Enemy of the state.
An enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state.
Dank Pod-Stash.
You're listening to Enemy of the State's Dank Pod-Stash. The Pod-Stash is available on YouTube, SoundCloud, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Let us know where you want to listen, and we'll release there as well.
If you want to help us improve the podcast, check out our shops at blackmarketmemes.threadless.com and dankpodstash.threadless.com. Links will be provided. Anything you buy helps us make the Podstash better. Business owners and creators, advertise on the Dank Podstash. Reach a larger audience, make more sales. Email us at dankpodstash@gmail.com for details.
Washington State listeners, please check out Washington State Anarchists and Libertarians Facebook group. Help us expand the Agora face to face.
All right, we've made it to episode 17 of Enemy of the State's Dank Pod-Stash. I'm, once again, your host, Nick, and I'm here with my co-host, David Ballantyne. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Coming to you from the recycling bin.
Yes.
We're here with we're here with Hodey Johns again for absolutely no other reason than Hodey's all right, and we like Hodey, and Hodey likes us. How are you doing, Hodey?
Yeah, I love you guys. Yeah, no, I'm doing great, man. I'm just glad to be alive and undoxed at the end of the week, and it's been a heck of a week, but I'm glad that we're still friends before and after.
Absolutely. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
everybody did get real mad at you for a few things.
Yeah, and some of it I deserved, some of it I probably didn't deserve, but I mean that's the Facebook game, right? I hate that like social media drama can be like actual news in the world, but like it is. So that's just the world we live in. And they'll be like, "Have you heard about this Hodey kid?" And I got to tell you, it's been rough. It's been terrible. Because I am used to being a unifying voice and having friends from all different walks of life. And so it's normally I'm a good enough a communicator to keep everybody on the same page. I failed to live up to that this week, but at the end of it, I think I'm getting a lot of them back. So it's going to be all right. I guess we should probably stop talking in like as if everybody knows me and paid attention to it and generics.
Well, there were a couple big swings in different directions this week. So yeah, if you want to lay those out.
Yeah, well, now I don't think I've talked with you guys since the first debate with Larken Rose, the voting one, right?
Right.
We're right between there. Yeah. So that went pretty well. I probably got like after the voting debate, I probably had like 150 new people add me to their friends, which is pretty big for me because I only had like 1,000 people before. So, 15% uptick. Mm-hmm. And all of them mostly being either anarchists or people that had heard from Larken, and I mean, there was probably only about like 8 of them that was like, "You've convinced me to vote now." But like the majority of them were like, "Hey, we still disagree, but I really liked a lot of what you had to say." And I just really appreciated that. And so it was great to like make those new friends and meet those people and kind of understand where I was coming from with voting, because as we'll find out later, I'm going to Tarantino this on you. It turns out that what I was saying about voting really wasn't statist at all. And probably and I shouldn't even say probably, something that Larken Rose even said he'd be okay with. So I guess that it really wasn't as controversial as you'd think it was. But yeah, so what I was saying wasn't even necessarily against what he would define as anarchism, or even I guess we would define as anarchism now, but something that I felt like was a difference, or something that a difference that I felt like would have been there.
Sure.
Yeah. But that all settled. I don't know. You guys heard the voting debate. What'd you take away from it?
I thought it was to go to what you just said. Yeah, I thought it was good too. But to go to what you just said about the whole voting thing, like I wouldn't go join a society that is the way you laid it out, and at least the second quote unquote debate you had with him. I would avoid that at all costs. However, I certainly wouldn't stop other people from going and setting up something like that altogether voluntarily the way you laid it out. I see nothing wrong with that. And I feel like anybody who would say that's not allowed, we will, that we won't let that happen. Like, well, so you're enforcing this? You call yourself an anarchist, yet you say you're about to enforce people to stop. You're going to stop people from voluntarily coming together and doing something that they want to do. Like, So,
yeah, my well, one of the things that was my takeaway was there was not quite a, I guess, settled definition of voting, or what kind of voting, something like that. Not really how to word it. It seemed like Larken was arguing against voting in the current state of government, voting in this system. And you were demonstrating that voting was more than that, and can be useful in other situations as well. It seemed almost like you were arguing a couple different things at a couple different times, but it was good overall. I took away stuff from both sides, and we'll link that too in the description of these videos, so y'all can go check out Hodey and Larken's points.
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. Definitely good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of information, a lot of like technical information, because I think almost all of our differences have been technical, like at this point. Like, it just seems like we want to talk about it broadly. We wanted to have, we always love to see actual philosophical differences between everybody. But we really didn't have philosophical differences. We had differences in like what you would call it. I mean, to be honest with you, in both videos, Larken's like, well, I'm not really against referendum voting. And honestly, like, that was 95% of my notes. Was trying to convince him that referendum voting was okay. And so when he like conceded it, I was like, did I just win this debate? Like, is it over now? I mean, like, that was my whole thing. And he was really like just pointing out against like representational voting, voting for people.
Yeah.
And I was prepared to defend that a little bit as well. I mean, I had some quotes and they were mostly from anarchists, but I don't really, in my voluntary society, I don't know that I would like that much either, So like it was one of those that I used their voices to defend it because I'm not really on board with it. So we probably ended up agreeing like 100% of the time. Now that kind of delves into what I want to discuss with you guys today, which is how people are like, oh, look at this idiot and this, this guy's so stupid. And this guy's calling for my enslavement. He's my sworn enemy. And this is terrible. And he lost the debate as soon as he got on the mic. And, there's one guy who was like, oh, this guy's too stupid and cowardly to even debate him. Right before I was like, yeah, I'll debate you. Like literally the comment right above where I'm like, yeah, sure. Sounds like a fun debate. Is some guy saying I'll never do it because I'm a coward. And I'm like, oh, buddy, scroll down about 60 pixels and you're going to be really disappointed in what you just said, But like, there's all this anger and everything around it. And then in the end, at the end of the second debate, Larken's like, you and I have the same principles and the same values. So all those people that were saying my values call for their enslavement or I'm calling for violence upon them or something. I mean, where are you at now? Like, for real? Like,
well, those people, I think, they already had something set in their mind as to what you were just from the label Minarchist. So they were already, they had already built this straw man in their head of who you were and what your argument was going to be. And they had already defeated that straw man. So there was nothing else you were going to bring to the table. But you bring lots of good points to the table and you lay out your ideas, in a good way. And you're definitely not stupid and cowardly. So.
Agreed.
Well, thank you. It's funny that I would go and present all the points that Larken agreed with. And then they'd be like, I mean, so I told you about this briefly yesterday, David, but the comments on the video went from like 100 to like 50 after Larken was like, well, I think everything you said is entirely consistent with anarchism. Really? People just started mass deleting. Like, they were like, oh my gosh, like, should not have said it. Like, that was it. Like, because they ended up being like, oh, this guy's calling for violence. This guy's calling for my enslavement. And they're trying to make my words out to be something that, I mean, they weren't, you know? Like,
and they weren't listening to you at all.
Correct. And so that's part of the issue. is like we talk about indoctrination from all sides, and we're not always going to be able to intellectually win all the battles. I mean, there's always going to be somebody smarter than us that believes something different than us. But I mean, the least we can do is be an open ear and listen to what they're actually saying, and then just be like, maybe these are differences like in verbiage and not actually like differences in philosophy. But I think if you get convinced that somebody represents something, then you start to become really angry, and that's bad. I mean, that's bad for the movement. I mean, especially socially. If you want to look at people that might have small differences and then be like, well, I just want you to know going into this, you're my sworn enemy and I'll shoot you if I see you. It's like, oh, wow. I mean, this is
what a
stepping
negative
into
way
quite
to
a
go
ring.
into it. It's just completely unproductive. And it's the way that a lot of interactions, especially online, happen.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't think it's Larken's fault, because I definitely don't think it's Larken's fault, because people see him as aggressive and they kind of see him as like an a-hole. But I think the thing is like he stands his ground and he's very principled, but he talked with me and was never angry with me. And so I think the thing is people see his like assertiveness and they want to embrace his assertiveness without embracing his substance and the validity of the questions that he's asking. Because you can be assertive without being an a-hole, you know?
Sure.
And so, and he's got that down. I think people try to mimic his tone because he's very good at like bringing people over into the philosophy. And so they're like, well, I want to do that too. And so I think there's some good intention behind it, even if I'm defending the people that are talking about killing me and doxing me. But, you know, I think the intention is to be like, well, I want to be like him. And so they mimic his tone. But what you need to do is really mimic his substance.
Exactly.
If you're really going to bring people over into it. And I think that definitely qualifies for you guys as well. You guys are both very principled, but you and I have remained friends throughout this entire wacky week, even when we've disagreed, debated, had it out on conversations, you know, because you've always been, you understand what I'm saying and don't have some, I mean, frankly, you don't have a prejudice, you know, against me as a human, you know, not trying to make me out to be something that I'm not.
Well, people need to really try and understand where somebody's coming from. They need to take a step back and you know, try to not come from a place of emotion and well, not necessarily not come from a place of emotion, but empathize and try to understand what the other person is saying instead of just immediately shooting them down like you say.
Well, there's a lot of if you say X, you are Y, just black and white labeling that is not true. I mean, you can say just about anything for a lot of different reasons, and maybe it's just open for discussion. Like I don't know if you wanted to bring it up or not, so sorry if you didn't, but the post about how we should treat cops and how we should attack that situation. People are saying, well, if you talk this way about cops, you are a bootlicker and I hate you. And it's just not hard to see, well, this is an idea that Hodey is presenting here. We can talk about this, and that doesn't make him a bootlicker.
Right. And yeah, I did want to bring up that post at some point, and we're bringing up a couple different things that I wanted to talk about, like the problem with being black and white and that post about cops in general. And I do want to get into that. I think let's talk about the black and white problem first. And that's that it's not that, and people assume if you're not dealing, like if you're not dealing with black and white, that you're not being principled, or that you're trying to like worm around something. You know, I got that a lot from the second debate where people are like, well, he can't give a straight answer about like if enforcement would have like additional rights. But the thing is, I had to qualify that these are rights that they were given by people that consented for them to have those rights. And so it's like, you can ask a simple question, but the answer is going to be more complex. You know, like you can phrase something as a yes or no question, but sometimes it says, well, it depends what you mean by that. And it's important to get those distinctions out of the way and to have that complex conversation. I'm not trying to feed you a word salad, but not everything is yes or no, or even if it is yes or no, those words that you're using mean different things to different people. So like, here's the thing. Minarchy is yet to be translated in the American dictionary. So like, I don't even have a dictionary definition on that. It's been translated in the Oxford English Dictionary. Like over in England, they have it. But it's one of those that's like, we've even yet to define that word, like actually define that word.
Sure.
So it's hard to say, like when people say, well, oh, you're a minarchist, that means you're statist. It's like, are you positive about that? Because the statism is, what's it? I got my notes here. Statism is a political system in which the state has substantial centralized control over social and economic affairs. Now, even if you thought I believed in small government, the word is substantial and centralized control. Now, how many minarchists do you know that are, people that are calling for small government believe that the government should have centralized control over social and economic affairs? I mean, probably none of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how many minarchists are actually statists? Now, we can have a debate on how many minarchists we think are wrong about stuff, but saying they're automatically statists means you don't understand what the word statist means as far as the dictionary goes.
Yeah, right? I was going to say, like, if you're sticking strictly to a dictionary definition, like,
right,
you say, the word minarchism is only defined in the Oxford Dictionary. So, and then you said, well, they have a definition over there. Well, clearly we can use the word and use it. So how do we use it here? It is defined in some kind of way. And it is, as with most words, always a different definition between various people. That's why it's important to try and understand where somebody's coming from. And, even before discussion, try to get these subjective definitions laid out so somebody can understand better.
Sure. I mean, look at what you had a mutualist on the show in between me and me.
Yeah.
We had we talked about a mutualist, who gets called socialist. I mean, look at what that word means to different people. George Orwell is the most famous voice ever against socialism, and he was a socialist.
Yeah, that one's wild. That one is all over the place. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, you're talking about a word that's gone over some like evolutions, and like we associate, of course, nowadays. I shouldn't say we, most, because obviously we're friendly with him, but most people nowadays associate socialism with authoritarianism. I mean, that's how I was brought up. That's how I always understood it. That's how I always thought of it, And so if you want to say all socialists are authoritarian, you certainly have a historical framework to do it, and you have like the current way we use the word to use it. But as far as like what it actually means, well, I guess if you go by the dictionary definition of it, it might be something that we'd be okay with so long as it's voluntary, right? So I totally understand that you can't just spend your life in a dictionary and it being like and just defining everything that way. Because I think when I called for a small amount of government, I always use the dictionary definition in government being a way to conduct policy actions and affairs. That's obviously not something that's counter to, I mean, as even Larken said, that's definitely not something anarchists are opposed to, having a means of conducting policy action and affairs. Sure. Right? They just want it to be, we just want to make sure it's mutual. We want to make sure everybody's volunteered for it. And we want to make sure that it's something that people are able to not be forced into, right? You're able to leave at any time.
Yes.
These type of bad systems.
But like he said, you kind of cherry pick that definition, which is another thing that people do. So, there's other definitions that could fit what you're describing, that are more of a negative.
Yeah. Well, and Larken was correct. He's like, well, in this case, your definition of government's no definition than like the rules at a restaurant or a bar, right? And that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Well, I recognize a bar as having rules and policies and actions and affairs that they're allowed to govern, and they can do whatever they want in their bar and say what they want. They do what they want. So he's like, well, is that a governing body? And I said, yeah, because that's by definition, that's what I'm using, and that's what it is.
So
and
if people had listened, they would have noticed that. They would have seen that connection there and been like, oh, so he's advocating for government to basically be like this,
Yes.
This is why he picked this definition, because this is the closest thing that fits his idea of what a small decentralized government should be.
Yeah. Well, and to clarify what you said earlier, David, the when we talk about like voting, it might I advocated for voting because here's the thing, and Larken has actually said this on his videos before too, that there's 3 ways you can have like policy, and it's either majority rule, rule by appointment, or like constitutional affair. And so that's like the 3 ways that you can do it. And you can kind of choose which one of those you want, you know, to say, or I guess the 4th was what, mob rule, or toughest guy gets to enforce, or whatever. And you get to choose which one of those the ones you want. Now, the reason I advocated for voting was just because I don't believe in mob rule. And like you said, I might not even want to be part of a society that votes. I might be more comfortable in one that's established with a constitution that's like, hey guys, just so you know, if you like agree with us in that these are your natural rights, you can't interfere with anybody else's natural rights. And that's not up for vote, right? That appeals to me more so than your rights, you know, your rights could change subject to this vote. The difference is, and especially in our current day, if I advocate for that vote, is it affecting somebody else? And if it's not, then I'm okay, because I just say those other people can leave, right? Or not, or they had to choose to begin with to be a part of the vote, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
That when I signed up for this society, I knew that my rights were going to be defined by a majority, and I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with that. David, you're not okay with that. But if people want to make a society that's okay with that, I mean, I'd have to interfere with them to stop it, right? I'd have to violate the non-aggression principle.
It would be much better to just, you know, if you believe it won't work right and it's going to fail, just let them do it and let it fail then. It's at least my line of thinking.
Sure. Well, and how many times have we heard that somebody says, well, you know, education should be a natural right, or healthcare should be a natural right. I mean, I don't want anything to do with those people because they don't realize it, but they're talking about the right to conscript somebody.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't want anything to do with those people, but I don't want to kill those people either. So what's the best way to do it? I think anarchism is truly the answer by saying, you set up your society, you do what you want over there. I'm going to set up my society. I'm going to do whatever I want over here. And I tend to believe that their society would dwindle because as people voluntarily decided to leave that society because they realized what conscription was and went over to a healthcare system that was agora-friendly, free market-friendly, then I think that ours would win out in the war of ideas. But I don't want to actually have a physical war. I'm not trying to rack up bodies with these people. I just want our difference of opinion to stay as difference of opinion and not become like a violent issue. Right now, unfortunately, politics is so divisive because you pretty much have to force it all on everybody or nobody, you know?
Well, I noticed something interesting. Well, I've been noticing this. I've been trying to form a bigger idea for maybe a whole show about it. But when you're talking about, you know, comparing government and rules in a bar or something like that, it was making me think about the rift between minarchists, libertarians, whatever, and anarchists. And I think it's seeing, especially the Libertarian Party, you know, participating in the current form of government, which we are so against, and then saying, well, we don't want government like this. Just seeing those two conflated together is a major turnoff for a lot of people, a major red flag, and it brings about the you're my enemy because you're participating in the same process that my enemy uses to oppress me. And it's really hard to see if people, because I know people in the Libertarian Party have different goals, but it's hard to see if people actually want to change the government, the current form of government, make a new one, or even work with it in some way or another.
It's I understand, and obviously being a member of the Libertarian Party myself and having worked for him even before and all that, that's something that we've had issues with before. You know, people people have these differences, and I totally understand it. And and people within the party will disagree. I have no doubt that some of them will want to use it. What I have an issue with is kind of what I was talking with you guys about just now, is the prejudice being there.
Mm-hmm.
Because our platform isn't much that anybody would disagree with. In fact, I linked it because we got to talking about it in a chat that Larken was involved with, and Larken was like, "Yeah, that looks good. I just wish they'd live up to it," you know. And so it was like, and so that's exactly it. I'm not saying all of our guys always live up to it all the time. I'm not defending every single one of them, but I mean, can you honestly say that you defend every single anarchist that you've seen?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
for sure.
Exactly.
And at some point, you have to have a unifying factor, right? You have to be able to say, you know, this is what we believe in general, and you're going to have to embrace some people that believe some different things. Now, in our ideal world, we could voluntarily agree with only people who believe exactly what we believe in, or heck, even only associate with ourselves and go out on the lam and just do our own thing. You know, if we just say there's no way for me to make this right, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so so that's possible, but it's not, I guess, just not likely that we would be able to find something, at least right now. I choose to unify with people, and I get a lot of stuff done, and a lot of it is stuff that, yeah, I mean, and so let's go ahead and get into the police one.
Sure.
A lot of it is stuff that I have had success with in the past because I have worked with a lot of other people to get some things done. One of the things we did was we talked to the police in Salt Lake City, and we encouraged them to use de-escalation techniques. And as a result, they haven't killed anybody since 2015. And before that, they were like, I think it was like top 10, one of the deadliest cities as far as confrontation with cops. Now, I'm aware I did not disassemble the entire system, right? Like, and that's the whole thing. I get the purist. I would disassemble them too. Like, and that's why I wish more people would listen to what I'm actually saying, is because, man, if it was just up to me, I would disassemble it too, but it's not up to me. So this is what I got to do in the meantime.
Yeah, you're trying to gradually do it, and I can see it.
Right. Well, I mean, I hope you can. Larken certainly was on board with it.
I can see where you're coming from with the attempt to be. You've said nothing but that you just want to be a unifier and help unify people and bring people together, and that's something that I like. And that's why I can understand where you're coming from when you made a post like that. Because I mean, I'll tell you, Nick and I both were like, "Oh no!" when we saw you made that post.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Not necessarily because we were like, "Oh, we disagree with it," but I knew the backlash that was about to come from it, and we saw it in even some of the circles that we frequent in, that people that had interacted with you and gotten really, really upset. And it comes from a place of they don't know you, and they see you make this one talking point, and then that's it. They have now labeled you as something that they can just attack, and that's what they do.
Yeah. Now,
I'm
not going to pin all of it on everybody, because on everybody else, because like I said, I as a great communicator, which I have always taken pride in, I was aware there would be some backlash. I did misword it. I did not delete it because I don't like doing that, because the people are like, look what you did. And it's not just other people. I mean, I learned from my mistakes, and I want to, you know, I admitted that I should have rephrased it. The first sentence, I believe I said that cops deserve to be treated like heroes. And I probably should have said,
certainly do not.
Right. I probably should have said, why don't we try treating them, maybe not even heroes, but why don't we try treating them and appealing to like the good in them, or I mean, like I said, we have all these polls that show that cops don't like doing what they're doing, but they still do it. I'm not, and people like, everybody was interpreted as me trying to give them an out.
Treat them like a human. Treat them like a human until they start treating you like something else. That is exactly how I handle any police encounter. I treat them like I would any other human being, and the second that they cross a line and start trying to treat me like I'm somehow lesser than them because they're wearing a costume is when then I try to push back a little bit.
Right. And that's Right, and that's fine. And people say, what? So they break into our house, I shouldn't defend myself? And I said, no. Like, I mean, I probably said 8 times in that post. I'm like, guys, you should absolutely, I don't care if it's a burglar or a cop, if they break into your house and you're not doing anything wrong, you have a right to defend yourself with deadly force. You know, I'm not saying like let's roll in front of them. People just interpret it that way. I think because, and again, this is where the communicator in me, I understand what I did wrong, because I understand that people have had negative experiences and emotional experiences with police. Heck, I haven't even done anything that wrong. I've told you guys on the last episode, I'm very law abiding most of the time. I don't want to do anything that's really contrary to common law outside of like not pay my taxes and pay for wars that blow people up that I don't know. You know, but like, I honestly don't really do much. I sit in my basement all day and play video games, and I make podcasts, and I cook food, and I just do normal stuff. Like, I'm a normal person, you know? So like, I'm not trying to do anything super illegal. I'm not engaging in prostitution. I don't do drugs. I don't do all of this, but I understand that even for me, I've gotten a speeding ticket before. It's one of those, you know, those like speed trap areas where it's like the speed limit goes from like 45 down to 25 and then back up to 45 for no reason. And that's always where the cops are hanging out. It's not where people actually die in traffic accidents. It's just that's where they hang out, because they're like, oh, you didn't see that for this 100 meters there, it went down to 25, you know? And so I get a speeding ticket there. I'm PO'd, or I'm angry, so I get it. I've been heated and in the moment and not want, you know, I'm being like, well, this fine. I mean, what does this help? This doesn't even fix me speeding. Who am I paying it to? I'm paying reparations to no one. Like, this is literally for your paycheck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I'm paying up over here. So I get it. And that's the thing. That's my like bad interaction with cops. I understand that people's interaction with cops, especially in our community, involves them breaking in their doors, killing their dogs, shooting their dad, arresting their mom, breaking up their family.
Yeah.
Like, and so do I understand why people get really heated when they talk about this? Absolutely.
And you also advocate, at least I believe so. I believe you said it, that you'd rather see it decentralized. You're for decentralizing most things.
Yes.
So you would rather see, you know, more private security firms so that people can pick and choose and things like that, and there could be more market competition.
Oh my goodness. Like, look at so we did a podcast over on the Weird Libertarians Network, and I did the research for it. It was right after, so our creator and other host, Chris Spangle, he got the tire stolen off of his car, and trying to get the police to do anything about it was like such a chore. And I'm like, dude, this is a real crime. He is a real victim. And you have to push them to do anything about it. There's this very famous court case, and it's really disturbing, where it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it's still the standing law that police aren't actually under any legal obligation to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
is that Warren?
I guess I can
DC?
give the details. Dude, I think it might be.
I believe it is.
So in the case, at least the one that I'm thinking of, and so you can tell me whether it's right or wrong. These robbers, or well, more than robbers, these very bad people broke into this apartment complex and started robbing the place. And there was a woman in there, and they held her hostage. And they heard somebody else from one of the other apartments like scurrying around, and they held her hostage too. And this one of the women managed to sneak out a 911 call in the middle of everything. Somehow, while they were getting, and they were being raped, as well as obviously robbed. They were being held hostage, and they were forced to like do stuff with each other. The whole situation's like crazy messed up. And they called the police, and they called 911, said, here's what's happened. Here's where we're at. We need help. The police had a car drive by, never knocked on the door. They said, looked like everything's fine. They kept going. They drove away. It's not the end of the issue. Somebody else from another apartment saw it happening, saw the women getting raped, heard it happening, because it had been going on for hours, and now it was like into the daylight. And so she saw it happening, called the police again, reported it. The operator, I guess what happened is issued it as like accidentally, instead of being like, this is like priority 1, issued it like super low priority. So 45 minutes later, cop comes down the road, stops his car this time at least, pokes his head out the window, looks around, gets back in his car, drives off. This woman, this third woman, hears like a noise and thinks it's the police and was like, they're here, they're in this apartment building, starts yelling. And of course the robbers hear her, robbers and rapists at this point hear her, and they then take her too and rape her as well, and throw her in with the other women and rob her stuff as well. They do eventually catch these guys, but of course these women are like, well, I'm paying for this public service every year that just, when I tried to use it, allowed me to get raped. And the Supreme Court ruled that the police did nothing wrong and said that they are under no, and they said it specifically, they are under no legal obligation to help you. And that doesn't matter if they could literally see a robbery and ignore it. Now, that's a systemic problem. I'm aware that it's a people problem. This is one of the other things that people said I was giving them a pass just because they're part of a bad system. And you're one of the guys that would have forgave all the Nazis just because it was a bad system. No, I understand. I'm not giving them a pass. You're always accountable for your own actions, right? That's part of being an individual. You know, you got to educate yourself and understand. But we also should be able to recognize indoctrination and try to fix that. You know, as opposed to just being like, you blankety blank, you deserve to die and hang and everything. We should be able to say, I think with most cops, and I understand that you guys might disagree, but I feel like if you just like, is this what you signed up for? Because polls show it's not. They don't like doing what they're doing. Do they still do it? Yes. Do they get told it's necessary? Yeah, that's part of the training. You know, even the stuff that might not seem like a big deal, you know, I mean, they have training that says we'd rather have a dead dog than like injured people.
And I do,
that's a training. I'm not saying.
I do disagree with that method, and I saw that someone else disagreed in a similar way. And I believe they said it should be a shameful thing. You should feel ashamed to be in that position, and I agree with that. I think a lot of people already, and I know you said you clarified that you don't think they deserve to be treated like cops or like heroes, but you see, especially in a lot of the groups, I don't know, what it was like Police One and Law Enforcement Today and stuff like that, people already worship cops and praise a lot of the stuff that they do, if not everything they do, take pictures with their family saying back the blue and stuff like that. And it has had zero effect to treat them well. And it looks like you're talking with the Salt Lake City police and getting the de-escalation training had a much better effect. That's something they actually had to do, not just, hey, you guys are good guys, you know, you shouldn't be doing this stuff. I honestly don't think they're good people. I don't think good people sign up for the police department.
The good people stay away. I've had lots and lots of interactions with the police. I have family members that are involved in certain things like corrections and things, and I've never seen one good human being who was also a police officer who didn't almost immediately leave the police force.
Yeah, and I can respect those points of view, and I'm not necessarily.
But those are just anecdotes, like
sure,
from both of us, pretty much.
Sure, we'll disagree with my techniques. Like the thing is like I'm getting something done. There's less dead people in Salt Lake City because of me.
And that's great.
Now here's the thing, right? And here's the thing. Yeah, I didn't overthrow the system and everything, right? But when you talk with them, here's the thing. I approach them like David, like you said. I approach them as people. They're people. I incentivized it. Here's the thing. Not only have cops with these de-escalation techniques, not only has it resulted in less dead like citizens, it's also resulted in less dead cops, right? So the thing is there is this incentive there. And I think that that's what I would rather push on the police. Like, okay, let's say that they're bad people, right? You guys are.
You got them, like Nick said, you got them to do something. So it's a little, it's a little bit more than, just treating them as humans.
Sure.
You got in their way and you said, you have to do this.
And we have several private police forces here in America, and they're wildly successful. This is one of the things that I did the research for. And I just said, now look, there's still a lot of problems. I'm not saying we're not out of a federalist government yet or anytime soon. But these private police forces, the police earn like twice what they do now. And they're usually tackling crime that actually has a victim. And they are under obligation. This is also by a different ruling. Your police force that is private is obligated to protect you if you are a tax-paying citizen in that community, right? And so here's the thing. When you approach a police officer and say, do you wish you could stop giving out tickets, quotas, prosecuting victimless crime, only responded when there's an actual real victim-filled crime, and make double your income, I don't know of many cops, good or bad, that are going to turn that down, right? And so we can argue on the semantics of good or bad and order followers and order givers and all that all day. But the bottom line is, I think that that's even a way to get bad people. I mean, that's capitalism, right? You can get bad people to do good things because you incentivize it.
Well, take out the
right?
double
so
your income
say, I've incentivized
part. Take out the double your income in that question and ask them the same question. Because that you're right. The incentives, money, that's going to talk. One of the best examples I've seen is Michael E. Wood Jr. on Joe Rogan, who's a former, I want to say Baltimore police officer that ended up quitting and supposedly being a whistleblower on a lot of the systemically racist practices that they enforced over there. And he went on Joe Rogan to talk about it. And it's just the motivation for his motivation for being a cop was to be a badass and to do the car chases and to get that rush and to get the bad guy, but not in the way of getting the bad guy that's hurting somebody, but to go out and bust what he perceived as scumbags, straight from him. And he said, that's what we're all here for. That's why we do it, for that rush. And I know that's just him talking, but that's the perspective that I see to be most true.
But I mean, do you even think that he would reject like the world that I described? I mean, the offer, I guess, that I described.
He would, if the money wasn't involved, I can almost guarantee he would reject it, because he got an injury, a shoulder injury. He dislocated his shoulder, was off for a while, and tried to get back into it and dislocated it again, just turning the wheel on his car during a chase, and was deemed unfit for service. He couldn't do it physically, and that's the only reason he stopped being a cop, and then decided to say, oh, well, here's another way I can make money by turning on them. It's all about the money.
Sure. And so, I mean, I guess the money's part of it. So I guess we're having an extremely hypothetical conversation, because in this case, the money would be part of it. Mm-hmm. But I just feel that talking with them, I guess it's had good results for me. So, for example, if I were to go back and talk to the Salt Lake City Police now, I have an open door with them.
Let me cut you off for a second, because of course talking with them is going to be, it's going to feel good to you. That's what they're literally trained to do, to tell you what you want to hear.
Well, yeah, but
their job is to get you to feel good. It's to make you feel comfortable, to get you to give information. Every cop I've ever talked to has tried to play buddy-buddy with me forever, until I made it very clear that I was not their friend, that they should actually probably worry about me. And then they treated me like I was a lesser human being. As soon as I told them, like, look, you're not anything special. You're not anything, you have a badge and you have a costume. It doesn't mean anything to me. You're like a regular Joe to me that I would be accosted by on the street. So let's just go from there. They immediately treat me like I am dirt.
So I guess like maybe our experiences are just different, because here's the thing is like, not only did I like, is it a matter of talking with them, which I understand they're open to, but actually getting like some substantive change that's maybe a little more difficult for them, but that ended up saving lives, saving money, or helping people legitimately. And so I guess that I am and it's probably shaded by our experiences. I think all humans are shaded by experience. This is facts of life. You know, I get that your experiences are real. I'm not saying they're not. I trust that you know that my experiences are real, and you know they are.
Yeah.
You know, and so we take each other at our word, and we've had different outcomes. So I think for me, just because of I've had success and we've been able to get some things done. I've been able to get some things done with that communication. I'm inclined because, and we can call it prejudice. I'm prejudiced towards doing that because I've had success. You know, you are prejudiced to doing what you've done because you've had success with closing yourself off with the police, you know? And so I'm not saying that everybody needs to be like me, but I think it's something that we should try. Now, this whole post came about because I have a friend deeply involved in the We're Libertarians movement. He's a member of the research team, and there's like 20 of them and multiple have military service. So if anybody wants to try and stalk and harass him, stop. I mean, they're already harassing him enough. But basically, he used to be a veteran, or he used to be a veteran. He is a veteran. He used to be a military, occupied other countries, understands, dislikes it, left his service, did all those things that we want him to do. And yet every time he brings up his experiences and talks about how bad it was, he gets this, oh, well, you scumbag, you should never have been doing it. You're morally filthy. I can't believe you would ever, whatever, you know, and he gets that. But on top of that, he gets the threatens. I mean, like I had this week, he gets threatened with doxing. He gets threatened with people killing him. I mean, it's at one point, I mean, that's insane. This guy is literally using his voice and experiences to talk about the bad things we did, and we're talking about killing him for it.
Yeah, well, like he's a victim.
It's out of hand.
There's a certain, yeah, that all is definitely out of hand. Like, even police could be a victim. Like they've been, like we said, with indoctrination, that it's kind of victim blaming. Like if he's trying to do something now after the fact and speak out against it and use his voice to do so,
well, he's realized
it's absolutely ridiculous.
He's realized the problem and he's trying to fix it. He's trying to make it better, in one way, and that's good. And it's different from people who are actively involved in the problem. And I want to go back real quick and say I don't want to lessen anything that you've accomplished or anything. I think that's fucking great. That was the results of your talks with the Salt Lake City Police, and if that works, that works, and that's great. And with your friend who's a former military, who's a veteran, it's ridiculous to dox and stalk and harass, especially if he's trying to, open people's eyes to what it actually is and make it better. Now, as far as there's quite a few people like that, we know that, and I've seen more military, ex-military like that than ex-police. But that's not. I just don't think that really makes up for it, and it's not something that they have to make up to me or to any of us that weren't involved with their actions when they were occupying other countries and killing or not killing, whatever they were doing in those other countries. The people that were harmed are the ones that they need, atonement. They need something, because there's the ones that were harmed.
Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, so what should we do with this guy? I mean, what should he do?
I'm not saying we should do anything. I mean, that's on him.
Yeah.
I'm kind of pointing that out as that's why I think a lot of people don't. I don't know. Maybe they don't buy what he's saying. I'm into former military, turning things around and changing their mind and showing other people that as well. I think some people find it disingenuous if they're doing that from the safety of the U.S. again, and not trying to help people heal from what they had done before. And that's up to them if they want to do that or not. But that's just what I see. Yeah.
Well, there's the optics of the whole movement, right? I know that you guys aren't the people doing it. And I think we need some form, especially if I'm going to be an anarchist now, it's something that we need to hold each other accountable for, and just say, like, look, dude, like, can we try a different tactic with this guy? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think bullying him is going to stop him, I guess I don't know. Like, everybody's free to do it. I'm not saying we force him. I'm not trying to get like some sort of government involved to stop him. But like, I think that there's a different way to reach these people. It's a shame that this guy, who is brilliant and honest and really good at communicating and delivering his experiences and helping our cause. Every time he speaks, I mean, messages, private messages, every one of his posts, some sort of threat to kill him. And it's like blatant and out there. And it's just not helpful to so let's talk about optics for a second. Because here's the thing. I am sympathetic with what Colin Kaepernick does, right? Takes the knee, wants to bring like police reform, trying to get brown people to stop getting killed. And that's a good cause, right? I'm completely with it. We had 18 bills that called for more surveillance of police when he started doing his protests, and all of them ended up falling apart after the protests. So like one of the issues is we can say, now look, Colin Kaepernick is under no obligation to be anybody's slave or do anything or stand for an anthem or anything like that. But at the same time, there's what we should do and what's healthy for the movement, right? Like the thing is what happened is now we've got all these. In fact, not only did those 18 bills get struck down, we've had like a bunch of new blue line bills get passed, right? Ever since then, because it transferred the momentum, because people got so mad about it. Should they be mad? No, he's just kneeling for a ceremony. He doesn't want to be a part of it, right? Who cares? You should ignore it. It shouldn't be a big deal. Nobody should know his name. He wasn't good at football and he's not good at protesting, and nobody should just know his name.
Right.
But the problem is that even though I believe he had all the right intentions, he completely tore apart his own cause as a matter of legality. And now we're actually going the wrong direction afterwards.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to say that he did anything bad. I think Colin Kaepernick is a good person because I think he donated like $18 million or something of his own money to like help people.
I think Colin Kaepernick just wants money.
I mean, it could be.
To be completely honest with you.
We could debate what he did all day, but it's the optics of the movement actually took us back a long way. I think if we continue to behave this way, it takes us back. It makes people less attracted to it. I'm not saying we're under any obligation to be attractive, but from a tactical standpoint, we should probably try to be a little more attractive.
Well,
like I said,
what movement are you exactly talking about? Because everybody calls their movement the movement, our movement, etc.
Let's talk about anarchy. Let's talk about agorism, right? Let's talk about those movements. And to say that we want more people to be against the government. Well, here's the light they already see us in.
Sure.
So if we start calling for throwing military personnel and police out of helicopters, does this make people outside looking in more attracted or less attracted to our movement?
Well, I certainly don't advocate for taking of anybody's life, even police or whatever. That's like you said. Number one, it's not good for anybody from the outside looking in. And number two, it's just I don't want anybody to die. That is one of the main drivers for me being against government and all of the BS is that there is so much death surrounding it all.
And that's the message. That's the good message. That's the message we need to spread. I mean, how many peace lovers are out there who hate the government violence, come to us looking for peace, and then they're inundated with all this, well, here's why we need to kill him. I mean, there was somebody on my post who claimed to be the Dallas sniper.
Yeah,
who's shooting all this.
Some of that stuff was crazy. I agree with what you're saying. The tactics,
bananas.
The tactics, those aren't good tactics. They're obviously not good tactics. And I'm honestly surprised at that he's getting that much flack. And it's strange because I could probably on both hands maybe count the amount of people I interact with regularly in the anarchist circles online who are former military. And no one seems to bat an eye. I don't see them getting death threats and some pretty hardcore, as far as principled circles. So that's just a bunch of fringe weirdness, and that's not to dismiss it because that's stupid. It's just a dumb thing to do is to tell this guy that he should go die or whatever.
I honestly think all of those people that go and take that crazy hard line stance and are threatening and doxing and doing just all that insane stuff, I don't even think they're really involved in any movement. I think they're just assholes on the internet, and it'll always be like that.
Mm-hmm. And well,
every movement has that. There's
I definitely don't think the death threats, they're obviously not productive. They're not doing anything good. And I appreciate that he and other veterans are speaking out against the system that they were in when they saw the problem. I'll say it right now, and I think other people should say it to them. I encourage them to make peace and reparations to the people that they've harmed. You know, put your money where your mouth is. I think that's a great point, and I believe the whole thing about punishment for crimes, no matter what they are, it doesn't fix the person when you punish them. It doesn't make the person that was wronged whole again. Paying them back in whatever form you can is one way for the things that were damaged, lost, stolen, whatever, and the time involved is one thing. And now when it goes into human lives being ruined, that's a harder thing to atone for, a harder thing to pay back if you even can. But if you've committed the crime, that's something that you should look at.
Yeah, I agree. I think that that's part of, even if not for the other people, I think for the making of the self whole, as you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saying, like, I want to live an honest life, and I don't want to live in the shadow. I mean, this is some crime and punishment level of depth we're going into here, but where you just say, I want to hold myself accountable to these things because I'm an individual, you know, and I am not against any of that. Anybody who listened to me genuinely, like you guys, knew that. I guess before we leave that concept, I know we have a few other things we want to get to, and I know we're pushing on time, but this is such an enjoyable conversation. It sucks. I hate time limits.
Yeah, for real.
Are we worried about time today, Nick?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. Sweet. Well, yeah, let's roll on this, because I think before I leave this post, which anytime you get like 30 likes and 150 comments, you did something wrong, you know, like it's like, oh crap. Like people feel the need more to comment more than give you the thumbs up. That's how you know you did something, you biffed on social media.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh no. I mean, people talking are good, but if they don't also like what you're talking about, it's bad. So
Sure.
it was bad. But I did want to say this, is that I understand that Nick and David, that you and I, you know, we might not see eye to eye on this issue. We might disagree with how to make it better. But I appreciate that you guys listened to me. It was a really hard day, because here's the thing. Not only like those new people that I met, some of them obviously fell off after that. And it's too bad, because those are conversations that I can't have. But there were other people who took the opportunity to put me on blast. People that were friends way before this. Like, and even before my debate with Larken, people that I've just been talking about, you know, freedom and liberty and really establishing those values with. I had one specifically that put me on blast, and somebody called him out and said, "Oh, I thought you guys were friends." And he was like, "No, I wouldn't be friends with a bootlicker." And I was just like, it just hurt, you know. And I was really
that just goes back to what I said. You know, it's they see something. A lot of people just wait until they see something that they can attack somebody on, and then they throw a label on you in order to be able to dehumanize you, and then they can say whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I understand social media friends. These aren't people like I know in real life, but I mean, I know, like, I have like 3 real life friends. So let's be honest. These are my friends. These are
I'm with you.
My community.
I agree.
And so it really hurt, and it was really hard. And I was just having a rough week, because I just was like, I failed myself to be the good communicator that I usually am. And I really wanted to live up to that. So I obviously wasn't feeling good about myself. Plus, I had a bunch of people attacking me, people that I considered friends. You know, I mean, the ones that I considered friends weren't necessarily the ones calling for my death. Those were always just internet friends who loosely liked me because we had 400 meters.
Yeah, dickhead.
Right. Right. But
wait, I mean, like what Larken said, they're all just boneheaded commies.
Boneheaded commies, and I would love to call all them that. But then we had
most of them aren't, though. Some of them I do know, and I'm like, they're not communists. They actually kind of agree with them. They just saw one thing they didn't like, and they decided to run with being angry.
Right. I mean, they're just misguided, and you know, I should have had that all in perspective. But it was just really hard, and it was a tough week. And I'm trying to get, you know, and I'm trying to deal with the fallout of it. I made a new post. I clarified myself. Nobody wanted to be a part of the new post, by the way. Everybody wanted to be a part of the old post,
Sure,
because that was more fun, you know. And I just was.
Post.
I know. Right?
I think I got on there.
where I just, yeah, you did. But, I think that was really important that even though you and I we were disagreeing with what it was, Nick, at the end of the night, you sent me this message and it just said, I know that we're like disagreeing on this issue, but I just want you to know that we're still friends. And I know I'm getting choked up here, but it's okay. That it really meant a lot to me. And because it was just really hard to lose all those friends and have people that I cared about and that I considered myself allies with, like, throw me under the bus. And I just wanted to say that you and David were just such good people by being able to disagree with me, even like strongly disagreeing with me, and just saying, like, sticking up for me and being like, this guy's my friend. I like him. I stand by him, because I know that wasn't hard. That's hard for you guys too. It's so much easier to do what the other guys are and hit me when I'm down. And you guys are just such good people. And I just want to say, I really appreciate your friendship.
I appreciate
thankful.
Yours too, man. Anytime. I already told you I have a truck. I'll help you move. I'll drive all the way to Utah. We talked about that. That's how we became friends. So, and yeah, I don't take lightly people being assholes to my friends if I actually consider them friends. I was disappointed in a lot of people, and I know that can be hard to have some shitty posts and people go after you. I don't think I've had anything to that extent, but yeah, it's definitely rough on the emotions, and it's a big problem in just so many talks that could be productive and movements, whatever you want to call them. And that's, once again, I want to call everyone to be kind, please, and think about things before you say them. I don't always do it either, but I'm trying.
Yes. Just some self-reflection would be beneficial for every human being, of all walks of life.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate you guys having that. So thank you both.
Anytime.
Yeah, man. I get it, man. I've had people, drop off and attack me who I thought were friends online, and I completely get it.
Well, I love that you post about blocking people who are like, oh, well, I'm going to say this because they say it. I don't like this word, but calling you a pussy for blocking people. And I'm just like, dude, if it's toxic and it's negative, get it out. Like, I believe I said
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we're the Hakeem Olajuwon and Dikembe Mutombo.
They always say they're like, oh, you're just a coward. You can't take it. You can dish it out, but you can't take it. My friends can call me any name they want, and they do. Like, people that I know can say all sorts of terrible things about me, and sometimes it's even serious. But that's the difference, is that, like, there is something between me and that other human being. If you come up on a post and you're like, oh, you're just a bitch, blah, 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 yeah, I might be like, I'm just going to block you. Usually I say something about it.
I just think it's hilarious that people are like, you're such a pussy for not letting me continue to talk shit to you. It's like, what? I wouldn't stand for that in real life. I would end this conversation in one way or another. I can't hit you in the face right now, so I'm going to hit you with the band hammer. Fuck off.
Oh no, my NAP, you can't punch him. Words don't qualify.
I'll do what I want.
Yeah. Well, dude, and you gotta have a limit at some point. And the thing is I think that it's pretty clear when it's obvious that you're not making any progress verbally with somebody.
Yeah.
I don't write almost anybody off. I mean, I will type, like, I'll be like, well, today's a social media day because I disagreed with somebody. If I feel like there's hope, then that's the day. I'll do it.
Sometimes that needs to happen.
But yeah, but I mean, if there's something that it's just like clearly this person, what they call, I guess in politics, they call them bad actors,
Mm-hmm.
right? When they're not, they're a demagogue. They're not embracing anything productive. They're clearly not interested in anything that you would say. I mean, that post revealed so many to me because they said so many things that I didn't say. Yeah. And I was like, and over I had to reaffirm, no, you can kill anybody who attacks you. Yes, you have the right to defend yourself. Yes, everyone's accountable for their own actions. I mean, I said over and over.
That's when the blocking starts.
Right. And you're just like, but you guys won't listen to it. So this is what's got to happen. I had one guy in the post be like, dude, I don't know anybody who talks like that. And I'm like, scroll up just a little bit. You've got the guy claiming to be the Dallas Sniper. You've got the one guy calling, he said, no more marked graves for cops, and called for lining them up and shooting them in mass and putting them in a mass grave. And then you had another guy who was like, yeah, if I ever found out who your friend is, I'd kill him. And I'm like,
I'm going to make a meme for you, Hodey, because
these are the people.
Constantly.
I get
people that'll do one thing and then make a completely fabricate a scenario and make a post about me around that fabricated scenario, and I'll have screenshots from the actual interaction I've had with them, and I'll post it, and somehow even with that proof there, they will still act like their made up delusion is truth. It's absolutely insane.
Yep.
Just psychotic. They just want you to not be, there were a couple guys, even after the thing with Larken, there were a couple that stood by their comments, after all the mass deletion of the negative comments, when they're like, oh crap, he believes everything we believe. I better I better delete all the bad talking I did about his beliefs now.
Yeah.
But they, there was some that was like, oh, Larken just folded on this one. He should have realized this guy's still a statist bootlicker. And I'm just like, oh, you're not listening. You're not listening.
You're a mini statist. You're a voluntary statist. It's different in my mind.
Sure. Well, I mean, the only definition, again, Oxford definition, not to get back into the dictionary here, but it's specifically a hypothetical form of government that does not interfere with individual rights and civil liberties and has itself no right to levy taxes. That's the only existing definition of statism we have, or minarchism that we have. And I don't think that says anything counter to anarchism, unless I'm incorrect. Unless you heard something in that where you're like, oh, I don't know. And so you'll notice.
It's not. It's not what I want, but it's not counter to anything having to do with anarchism.
Right. Well, the only definition lists 3 negative things. It doesn't even say anything it does do. It just says they can't interfere with your individual rights, they can't interfere with your civil liberties, and they can't levy taxes. I think all 3 of those things are very consistent with anarchy, right? So you'll notice that there was no uproar from my minarchist community, in spite having thousands of them and only 100 or so, friends from the anarchist community. You'll notice that the minarchists weren't PO'd about anything I said.
Well, let me ask you this. My biggest pet peeve with the Libertarians, the Libertarian Party, and the minarchist community, is the people who present themselves as some kind of savior, the people who lord themselves over the common rabble, and those who think that if you just get them put into a position of power, they will solve all of your problems. That's my biggest pet peeve.
No, the problem is the position of power.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I mean that's you look at history and how many like good-natured tyrants they had, but all it takes is one bad-natured one, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe they're right. Maybe they would fix all these problems if they had the throne. Right. I mean, that's the whole thing that Obama said. His
person comes along and they fucking change it.
Sure. Obama said his biggest regret was he felt like, or not his biggest regret. What was it? His biggest mistake was that when he signed all those executive orders, when Trump got elected, he says, I feel like I left a loaded gun in that office. And that's exactly what he did, because he set the precedent that you can write all these executive orders to override Congress and do whatever you want. And then you give it to the next guy. So yeah, you might have liked it when Obama was the guy holding the gun, but now Trump's holding the gun. The problem is a guy holding the gun to your head. It's not who's holding the gun, because every 4 years that's going to change.
Yeah.
Heck, even if we didn't believe in elections, then every lifetime of person that's going to change. Like this is the problem that they've had throughout history. You have all these blank the greats who were good tyrants, but all their work gets undone by blank the terrible.
Yeah.
And so that the issue is that position of power. Now here's the thing is that's, and I guess we're kind of opened ourselves now that we've got a little extra time here to talking about why I ever called myself a minarchist and not an anarchist. To be honest with you, by definition, I guess I categorize as both a minarchist and an anarchist.
It's sadly up to other people's subjective opinions, realistically, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. Let's get off of the dictionary for a second, because I tried to do this with Larken just a little bit, but I love history, right? I read history, I study it, I love talking about it. Most of my most of my examples that I use are something from history because I just love talking about the eras, and that's really like my passions. Even when I was involved in like speech and debate, like I found that history was my favorite way to talk about the various subjects that I've been given. And say, well, we got to remember if we give somebody this is something that ends up happening. And what we need to understand is that anarchists are dealing with what socialists are dealing with right now as well. And I don't think they're as aware of it as socialists, because socialists are very famous for being authoritarians. You know, anarchists, of course, have never had authoritarian problems, but they've always been, and this is what I tried to say, is that in history, every time before this moment today, they have also been opposed to voluntarily making rules and creating rulers. And we need to understand that that's one of the hangups that people have with anarchy, because that's one of the hangups that I had with anarchy. That's why I had all these notes, is because I'm just like, they were opposed to you voluntarily making these rules. Whether you're reading Max Stirner or William Godwin or Henry David Thoreau, they were against even this voluntarily making these arrangements that had rules, because that required enforcement. And all that enforcement had to be bad. And I understand what Larken was saying when he says, we'll call them boathead commies, because some of them are like the ANCOMs, right? The longest lived anarchy ever to date has been in the Ukraine. And those were actual ANCOMs, right?
Yeah.
And they got surrounded by people. That was the Holodomor. That is about as horrifying as the Holocaust. So if you don't know what the Holodomor is, go ahead and look at that, because that's a nightmare. But it happened because they were against any type of rules. And so when the other soldiers started to invade, they're like, well, we're against making rules that forbid them to be on our property. So none of us have any ways to defend our own property, because we were against any system that would have defended it. We can defend it as individuals, but we were against ever making a collective, like, hey, if somebody invades your property, let's all collectively go whoop their butts. And it's that,
well, like if you're sitting there and you look over and your neighbor is getting shot at by some random guy that you have never seen before, and you like your neighbor, he's a good person, would you not go out and help your neighbor?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, even if you don't like your neighbor, even if I didn't like my neighbor, if I looked over and I saw a neighbor that I didn't like, but some random group of people were suddenly invading the area and they were coming up and trying to take over everything. This is a super small scale, of course, but
sure,
you would want to help. People with good hearts would want to help, right?
Well, it's small scale, but it becomes large scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? This occupation of troops happened in America, first of all. That's why we had to have a revolution. And then you look at the Ukraine, that happened there as well.
It's a lot of
so what you're saying is
disagreement and hate of words too, because like rules and rulers, you said it could be leaders and agreements, and be totally fine.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. So like that's, and unfortunately that's like what I want to go back in history and tell these people. The one in France, Armand II, I did get this one out during the debate, and he just expressed, and he said, he said, I shall no doubt not be accused of not loving liberty, but I know that all movements of people lead to liberty. And so he just was trying, and he was exiled because he was standing up to these, principled anarchists who were saying, you're calling for this voluntarily us defending ourselves and making these arrangements. We don't have to be a part of it, but nobody's supposed to be involved in any of these arrangements or agreements. And they kicked him out. And I don't have to tell you what happened to France in 1789. I mean, they didn't get democracy until 100 years ago, for goodness sake. Like, this is the problem. And so unfortunately, like, here's what we have is a problem. Now it's unfortunately, I loved 2 weeks ago when I got to call it your problem. Now it's our problem. But here's our problem, is that this is when people study anarchy, this is what they get. And this is what we also have to understand. I don't think Larken's wrong for discussing the philosophy. I think that's a great way to get some people on board. But let's not also abandon those who studied history and those who are educated in other ways. Yeah. Because we love these historical things. And we embrace them and we say,
history is what made me an anarchist.
Yep, same here.
Yeah. And it can't be these, and I'm sure it's not these situations that I talked about where you're like, oh, I love the fact that they weren't able to make a voluntary contract with each other and were completely unable to defend themselves. I mean,
but a lot of these things you're describing, the way that they try to enforce the voluntary association between peoples, that's not anarchy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's personal anarchy, I guess, because you say,
No,
hey, if I catch you,
it's not personal anarchy. It's not even really individual anarchism. It's some weird.
Well, it's a weird thing.
I don't know. Things progress.
You're saying principled anarchy. There's different sets of principles, you know.
Yeah.
And being principled with bad principles.
And they're very subjective.
Yeah, exactly. I don't hold.
But wouldn't you say Max Stirner's like?
I don't know. I don't know what I'd say about Max Stirner, to be honest. I'm still kind of. But
wouldn't you say he's the most famous anarchist of all time? Like that's. I mean, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Who would you say is the most famous? Just out of curiosity.
Most famous anarchist? Well, my general personal philosophy is you don't follow people. You follow your own ideas and other ideas that you learn. You know, it's like your life is basically a science experiment.
Sure. No,
I want to hear what Nick was trying to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Wait, what was I trying to say?
I don't know. Yeah, it sounded like something that I was trying to say that you were going to say for me. So. Oh. Something about the principled anarchists.
Oh, there's different principles. Like people, there's principles that people derive from Proudhon and Tucker, you know, and there's principles from Spooner and all this stuff, and they're oftentimes translated or taken incorrectly, in my opinion, and they're not a way I would want to live. Like defensive voting from Spooner.
Open for interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess maybe I can't say it's bullshit that Spooner defended defensive voting. I don't think he did. And other people say, yes, he did. And we're looking at the same quote and we both disagree. But I don't know. As far as famous anarchists, I came from the ANCAP, the more right side, I guess, of anarchist philosophy. And I wasn't aware of Stirner till not too long ago. I would have to say the one that I heard the most about, if you call him an anarchist, would be Rothbard. But, yeah, I don't think you should follow people either. I think libertarianism is a horrible idea. There's a lot of anarchists that'll
be mad at you calling him anarchist.
I know. I don't necessarily agree that he is one. So,
I mean, I came from probably more of a leftist background in some standpoints, but at the same time, my foray into the internet realm of anarchy was I immediately started hanging around ANCAPs and arguing for free markets with them. Mm-hmm. Yet my just before finding the anarchist and libertarian sphere on Facebook and social media, I hung around around a bunch of syndicalists, which are, you know, kind of more statisty left anarchists. So
yeah,
it's a wide spectrum of things on both sides, and that's why I like you, Hodey, is because you are about, you know, trying to unify and you try to understand the other person. But I'm gonna digress here, so let's go back to what we were talking about.
Oh no, you're fine. No, I mean, and that matters a lot, because we're talking about these not having these. We're trying to get rid of these prejudices. Like I said, I understand that I have them. Everybody has them. We're all covered with them. I mean, even if you like the way a certain girl looks, that's a prejudice. You know, we try to do away with as many of them as we can. It's good to have as wide a net as we possibly can, but ultimately we're people. We have our own opinions and values. The issue that I have, I guess, with the optics is that we need to understand that while we may have been brought to anarchism through different routes, the way anybody else looking in, if they study online, they're going to get Max Stirner, where he talks about families are a big no-no, right? Or William Godwin.
Is that your first hit when you search it? Because that's not my first hit when I search it.
Well, when I look at, like, I don't know, when I type famous anarchists, let me see here. All right. Let's have some fun out here.
Jamie, pull that shit up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, this is in alphabetical order. Look at this. So Pietro Asiardo. Here, if you look at the Wikipedia,
I bet you that isn't what my search is like. So I bet everybody's search is subjective and individualized to them.
Yeah, I think
Google.
kind of out of touch kind of out of touch with outsiders looking in because we're in it too. So, but what we were saying about like there's the different spectrum, and Hodey, you are a uniter, you know. I think that's an admirable thing to do. I think that's what we're trying to do with the show. We're all standing on the same ground of not wanting government, of wanting to be able to be free. And that's the whole point. The semantics, the economics, everything can be argued later, but it can't even be tried now with government here in the way.
I think that's so good a point. I think if you were to ask, and again, this might be different based on experience, but I got to tell you, I feel like if you were to ask most of, at least me and my Minarchist community, and at least I'll say the libertarians that I hang around with or actually like substantially associate with, if you'd be like, would you be okay with doing this so long as it's voluntary? And the people that don't want it don't have to participate in it. I think by and large, they'd say yes. And I think that is a huge hook that we're not, and maybe that's just my uniter brain thinking of a hook, but I think that's a huge hook to bridge some of these gaps, because apparently there was never really a gap between us. Larken didn't make me an anarchist. He said, "You're an anarchist." By declaration.
Nick and I knew you were an anarchist before Larken gave you his endorsement. We were already talking about it.
I appreciate you not wanting to out me. I mean, that's private, and that's something everybody should
He's a closet anarchist,
when they want to come out. No, but I mean, by his, and to be honest with you, I'm not trying to say that he's wrong, because I do understand that most minarchists, in fact, almost all anarchists say that the government is this coercive, non-voluntary force, right? And so, because I reject that, it would have been very simple if somebody's like, well, do you reject this, non-voluntary, non-contractual force on you? I'd be like, oh yeah, of course, and so I would have been able to be like, well, I totally agree with you guys. I have no problem calling myself an anarchist much sooner. The issue is I was shaded by all of this history, by these studies.
Was it the history, or was it the detractors, the people who were just so vehemently telling you that you could not be an anarchist because they said you couldn't?
No, I like I said, I've had no backlash from my community at all. For now, I mean, I've even said it in my profile. If you click my about, I've updated. I label myself an anarchist. I probably should put agorist on there. I completely forgot to do that while I was at it, but okay. I put voluntarists, anarchists. I still put libertarian on there because, frankly, I'm still part of the movement. But I guess. But I updated it, so I have no fear of it, and there was no backlash over it at least from my community, because I think what they saw, I didn't compromise any of my values. Larken just says your values to me are anarchist, and a minarchist, or at least the ones I've associated, look at it and say your values to me are minarchist. I think even a lot of people that are like for the drug war, I'd be like, would you be okay with living in a society where you and like the people that you had outlawed drugs and like, and it was all voluntary, gave up drugs, and all the drug doers were never able to associate with you? I think most of them would say yes. Mm-hmm. And I might need
to be honest, I think there needs to be areas like that, at least with drugs.
Sure.
Some people can't handle it.
At the very least at first, right? To try all these different things. I mean, this is business, right? We try all these different things, and the better societies get more people. This is why I told you guys when I was discussing capitalism that I had no issue with mutualism. I actually talked with that guy afterwards. You probably saw it on your show. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I would consider you a mutualist. And so just because I support his ability to have a horizontal business structure. Yeah. Like I'm down with that if that's what he wants to try. I feel like if it's a good structure, then he will win. And if it's a bad structure, then something else will win. It's just...
Yet we're all confined by the state.
Right. By force.
Yes.
We don't get to try these multiple things. I had a discussion with somebody recently. They were talking about like this zero waste.
Yeah, you were talking.
business.
Yeah, you were talking to my girlfriend.
Oh, I didn't want to. I didn't want to say that on the show, but yes.
We need to be more personal on this show, I believe. So
Okay.
everybody can hear it.
All right. I don't know if she wants to be associated with me anymore. I just, who knows? But the
She thinks you're awesome, man.
all right. Well, that's good. I'm glad I'm not a point of contention in your household. But I was talking with her, and and we're just talking about how. Oh, hold on, my Alexa's going bananas.
Shoot it!
Her name.
Hey,
I'm not talking.
Are you shoot it. Are you telling me the government is currently listening in for sure on this conversation?
Oh, I hope they
man.
are. Bring it on. Anyway, so I was talking with her. Man, now I'm all off track. I was talking with her about zero waste. Hold on, it wasn't even about that. It was the way we were discussing it. Anyway, we came.
I saw you comment on it, and I can't even remember what it was. I barely looked.
It's all gone now. Anyway, we were just talking about it. We came to this, we're just talking about, oh, this is what it was. I said, imagine this society where you don't have a single currency, that federalized currency, that people can try other different kinds. Because she was talking about a way to help single parents, right? And try to help them raise their kids. And a way to reach out to them. No, I don't have to explain it to you, but I'm sure there's other people listening.
No, you do have to explain to them. I should shut up.
Yeah, so no, you're good to talk. You're good to talk. But we should, she's like, well, I want to find a way to help all these people. And I said, just imagine if the market was truly free. I explained to you guys that capitalism, by definition, has to have no government interference. And it's got government interference everywhere, right? But can you imagine having a million different free markets that are incentivized to have her become productive, or have I guess I should say her, it's not single moms, single parents, have the person become productive, try a million different ways to make them productive. Mm-hmm. We have one way right now, and it's led to more people on welfare in a lower standard of living. We have a greater poverty problem by even trying to solve the problem in a singular fashion. We've made it worse literally by trying to solve the problem because we only tried one way. I'm not against the people who necessarily wanted it. Their hearts, I'm sure, in the right place, just like when we talk about these cops or military or whatever. They don't think of it as robbery. They just are like, I really want to help these people, and this seems like the best way to do it. Okay, they're wrong. The problem is we can't move on. They're the only choice.
Yeah, and not only that, we have a lot of people in quote unquote the movement that think it's okay to bash people that feel that there's no other option or are indoctrinated enough to think that this is all they can do to seek government assistance. It is again victim blaming. Like, these people are victims of the markets being controlled, and that's a lot of the reason they're in poverty. And instead of helping them, a lot of people tend to bash them and make fun of them for being poor and say that, hey, you could just do this and this and this and that to be better because I do it, ha. And that's so disrespectful and just obscene to me.
It is. Now, I've always liked the idea of taking from the government and not giving back as well. And a lot of people get up in arms about that and say, well, I'm going to have to pay for you then. It's like, well, stop paying. What's the problem? If you don't like the taxes, don't pay them. Well, then they're going to come after me. It's, oh, no. Did you think this was going to be easy?
Exactly. They are passing their own. They feel that they have to pay or something bad's going to happen to them. So they're too cowardly to not. I'm sorry to call people cowards, but they are. They're too cowardly to not. And then they want to blame the people who, especially, and for some reason, it's the people who are like, I'm going to take and give nothing back. Mm-hmm. They want to blame them. And those are the people that they actually want to kind of be. Wow. Okay.
So that's a mix of cowardice and indoctrination.
Yep.
Because it's cowardly because You say, oh, this is their only lifeline. Well, here we are. I'm trying to say that I'm offering an unlimited amount of lifelines and solutions to their problem. Can you imagine competing economic systems for people that would want them to be a part of their system? That's a massive incentive. I mean, McDonald's was serving black people long before they had to serve black people because it's good business, for goodness sake. You know, we have more. And so if we have more of that, right, if we release more and more of these, oh, you're only able to deal with it this way, they're cowards because they see one way, which frankly doesn't work, but it works, I guess, well enough for some people. And we're saying, okay, yeah, we're taking that one way away from you where you have to rob everybody and give it to them. And we're going to create a billion different ways where people are incentivized to have this person be a part of the system. And then that leads to the indoctrination, because we don't understand is that with a single federal system, the Fed, when they put money into the system, when we look at how money enters the system, they give it to whoever they want, and they're always at the top first, and it trickles down to us. I'm not against the idea of trickle-down economics if it's like a voluntary business that gets the money and trickles it down among its employees. But it's a huge problem when they give it to whoever the businesses were that were like their buddies and the Fed. I don't know if you guys knew this. Among the lobbying groups that spend money buying out politicians, the number one, and this is one that will come up at the top of your Google, is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The guys who print the money buy out more of our politicians than any other private group.
It's amazing the people that don't know that too. Like, fuck.
That's how money enters the system. And so they take it as like, I mean, sometimes even capitalists get offended because they think I'm coming after them. And I'm like, the Fed could just as easy, literally when they add money to the system, they're saying, we're going to put how much business was done this year. They take whatever the GDP was and they add that to the system. They say, oh, there was 300, billion dollar. I mean, there's a lot more, but let's just say there's $300 billion in the system, that was done in transactions this year. So we need to make sure there's $300 billion of currency somewhere around there. And they give it to centralized banks and they give it to their business cohorts. They have no restraints on who they can give it to, military, they give it to whoever. And then we are sitting here hoping it trickles down to us. Now, I'm not trying to sound like a commie, but literally you could just as easily take that $300 billion, split it up evenly among every single person in the United States, and it's like $40,000. Whatever the GDP to the people is, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's like $40,000 to $60,000 a year to everybody. But that's just as easy to do, and literally has the same economic effect as far as our currency goes. Yeah. We just don't sit around waiting for it.
Yeah, and it doesn't keep the right people in power and the right people happy, so they're not going to do that.
Exactly.
Yes, they lose that control.
Yep.
And that's the issue. So like that's the thing is when you hear me say this and I do these, these studies and everything, this is why I'm doing is because we need to understand this is not capitalism. It's not even close to capitalism. This is not the way it's supposed to happen. And you want to talk about a way that sees everybody as equals when we're sitting here giving all the money to the people at the top and hoping it trickles down to the people at the bottom. I mean, we should not be talking to capitalists like they're I mean, here I am trying to get you a $60,000 paycheck every year. I mean, doesn't that sound a lot better than what we have right now? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's just,
I don't want it from the government necessarily, but it would help.
Sure. But I mean, that'd be a better step than what we're doing right now. At least they're not incentivized that way. At least they'd have to cater to us.
I don't know if it'd be a better step, but it would certainly be better right then.
Sure. I mean, maybe it's not even a step in the right direction. It's a different step, and it'd be better than at least them having all that power. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I'm for free banking system. I don't want anybody to get it twisted. I'm just putting it in perspective that what they're doing is giving it to those people in bulk when they could give it us to us all equally.
Right.
And they don't do that, even though they have every power to do so.
The point is showing what they're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess to wrap this up, because I want to talk about the protest, the wall situation.
The shutdown and
I
whatnot.
I think it's just the shutdown and the confrontation with the Native American,
yes,
the MAGA hat guy. I want to get into that before we.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up on that.
I guess just to wrap up. Yeah. to wrap up what I am saying is I think that if we change our dialogue with people, don't be so, remember, we're always talking about ideas. I'm not against what Larken says, talking about if you call for oppression, that's an immoral thing to do. I'm not saying we should abandon those types of discussions, but let's remember that maybe an incentivized way of discussing these with people might be a better way to do it. Now, maybe not with the police. We can disagree about that. But if we're just trying to bring people over into anarchy, let's talk about what government actually is. Let's iron out our definitions, first of all, to make sure we're not having a massive misunderstanding. I mean, what is on Wikipedia? Oh, they list like 7 examples of post-collapse anarchy, and all of it had problems because people weren't allowed to make voluntary contracts. So let's talk about that voluntary contract. I think that is such an outreach. That's right there with agorism, as far as just being a great thing to say to somebody where they're like, well, I don't have any problem with what you just said.
Yeah.
And you say, well, that's agorism, or that's volunteerism. So if we get them to embrace that, I think they'll be much more receptive to it, instead of threatening to dox them because you think in your head they've called for your enslavement.
Right.
That's what I have to say on that.
Well, and it would be so incredibly helpful and exponentially effective if every anarchist was an ambassador on the subject, instead of being so negative. It would grow the ranks like crazy if everyone could have the definitions, like you said, ironed out. But that might be a pipe dream, because everybody has different ideas of what anarchy actually is. But no, we should all find. I would appreciate if we could all find a common ground. And it was really interesting. You mentioned earlier that we found common ground in this small network that's kind of growing. Between you, me, and David, and then now you and Larken Rose, and then David, myself, you, and Jack Neeson as the mutualist you were referencing earlier. Great conversations and great agreements. Building great agreements, foundations to keep working together on.
Yeah, I think that these are great things to talk about. The more information, the better. I think people watch a little too much Rick and Morty, and they think being smart means you have to be an a-hole, or
right?
Or like act irrationally. I think we can definitely iron that out. But I think that's why the Enemy of the State podcast is so important, because I think there's so many different angry, enraging podcasts you can listen to, and there's very few that are enlightening and unifying. And I think we just need more of those. We need more of your voices.
I agree. Well, that's what we want to do. We want to build as many strong voices as possible. It's kind of pointless, as far as anarchy is concerned, to have one strong voice and a lot of people with smaller voices following that voice. Everyone needs to have a strong voice, because everyone does have worth and have value and already have a strong voice, even if they're not using it. But yes, kind of moving along, like you said, we want to talk about the MAGA hat kid, and I believe his name is Nathan Phillips. There's a Native American and Vietnam vet, and the controversy around that. Let's hit that real quick before we get out of here.
Yeah, Hodey, you had some kind of information coming from whatever groups you surround yourself with.
Well, yeah. So I was at work when the whole the speech and Nancy Pelosi's rejection even before the speech happened, and then and so I Saturdays are my long day, so I get off of this 14-hour day at work, and I got messages I got 208 missed messages while I was at work, and I was just like, oh my goodness. And it was mostly about this confrontation. And so as I'm reading through them, and as everything is ironing itself out, I think the one thing that I really took away from it was how wrong the original media account of it was, and how there was just no accountability for them to be right. And the incentive was there to make up whatever they wanted to say the story was, and just use a couple pictures.
Yep.
And it would have taken, I mean, we now
agree with that.
We now, and here's the thing, and Chris Chris had a lot to say about it because the initial accounts were really bad, right? And condemnation worthy. I don't blame the average person for getting outraged over it because I had the benefit of coming in after it had kind of gotten ironed out, because now we have video of every single second of that confrontation
from many
beginning
angles.
To end. Yeah, from many angles, from every angle. And so we can see exactly what happened. And so now I'm not as outraged as I was before. I don't really feel strongly about either side necessarily, but now that I see it, I'm just saying this was major network news.
Yeah.
I mean, Fox, CNN, NBC, ABC, run down the list. This is major network news, and every single one of them got it wrong. And
they didn't get it wrong. They did it on purpose. And it's major that it's on all of those networks as well, and it's major enough that the diocese had to or did issue a apology. And I was reading something on that was pretty interesting, that they were really in a situation where they couldn't not issue an apology because of how the media spun it, whether or not they needed to. It would just be problems for them. It's no one's saying these kids wearing MAGA hats are awesome. It's probably, who knows? They couldn't intelligently describe why they're wearing a MAGA hat in the first place, other than
none of
mom
them
and dad.
could articulate their political beliefs. I bet you money. Like,
no, I mean, what? They're like 15-year-old kids that went on a field trip. Yep.
And
they want to be presented as something that they aren't.
There were three very opposite marches that or groups that were part of very opposite, had different ideas and opposite marches that happened to be in contact at the same time. Happened to be, however that ends up, with the routes planned and whatnot. And it was a bad situation.
Who did all that though, Nick? Who planned everything and gave those permits?
I wonder who wrote the permits and the routes and all that stuff to where one would happen to end right where another one was, where people with different political views would just happen to meet up with a bunch of cameras. Who knows? But I feel really bad for that kid in the video, because watching him there, he just looked awkward. He wasn't mocking. There were other people around mocking and stuff, but he was approached. And if some guy approached me beating a drum and whatnot, I don't have any obligation to move out of the way or anything. I was approached, and I probably would not have handled it as well as he did if I felt threatened in any way by it. He just looked like he was awkward. I feel really bad that kid's life.
He looked really awkward.
Yeah.
His face, I have bad anxiety, and let me tell you, his face was riddled with anxiety.
Well, I guess he, as well as many of his classmates, thought that this was like some cultural presentation, because that's what they were there for in DC. So he's like,
they're
watching
not
a show.
They don't know what the hell's going on. They don't speak that language. They walked up to them,
right?
And the children, honestly, were clearly doing a school chant.
Yep.
Clearly,
they did go into a chant I've seen with like the Florida Seminoles fans or Atlanta Braves and whatnot, which could definitely come across as disrespectful. I think it was probably a bit disrespectful, if not very disrespectful. And I'm not saying there wasn't mocking, and
I couldn't even make it out at that point.
Well, I didn't hear anybody chanting "Build the Wall." Like, that's the thing going on.
Yeah, there was
Who the hell was chanting "Build the Wall"?
I've been looking for videos that have been altered, which I wouldn't be surprised if somebody came across, like a video where they slightly altered the audio to put in some kind of "Build the Wall" chant, just underlayering the rest of the chants.
But if you had to dig this deep for it, there probably was not a widespread "Build the Wall" chant. The fact that we've all seen the videos and can't even hear it yet. I mean, maybe one guy said it, maybe, but we haven't even found that yet. You'd have to dig for it.
What if there's one guy chanting in the crowd, "Build the Wall"? Does that suddenly represent all of those?
Right? Is it all of them now?
Teenagers.
Yeah. I mean, and I have no doubt, especially based on his hat, he'd be okay with the wall getting built. But he's a 50-year-old kid on a field trip. The guy doesn't know. Like, talk to him, man. Yeah. Like, I mean, he sat there. Honestly, I think the thumbnail is him smiling with the Native American, right? I don't even find the clip that bad. Honestly, I'd hang that on my wall and be like, here's me smiling at somebody who everybody thinks I hate.
It seems like people want to make some confrontation between two different groups who do have differing opinions. They want to make any kind of confrontation between those two, make it extremely bad. which of course that's what the mainstream media wants to do.
Yep, looking for a
So-
story. And the problem
And
is the video, I'm going to try to say this as objectively as possible, describe it as objectively as possible. There's a group of the kids with their high school wearing MAGA hats and whatnot doing a school spirit chant. You can hear that. And then you see a couple people, including Nathan Joseph, I think his name is, walking towards them. The kids and everybody were standing
It's
right
Nathan
there.
Phillips.
Nathan Phillips. They were walking towards the kids, and then the kids end up surrounding them. And some people see that as they walk towards them, and they put whatever spin on it, that they wanted to confront them about their hats, who knows, whatever. And then the kids surrounded them. And I don't know.
The people
can
behind
see
Nathan
two different
Phillips-
things from the same video.
Yeah, there's so much open from interpretation. But I've tried to find as many different angles of that altercation as I could, and there's a thin point in that crowd where they could have definitely all backed up the natives, and please don't, nobody listening think that I'm backing these MAGA hat wearing assholes. They're dumb teenagers. I think everybody in the situation it was just manipulated. But there's definitely a place where they could have backed up. They were not surrounded. You can even see it in the main video when they scroll around. If you look at everybody's face as you're watching it, you can see who belongs to each group. It's obviously differentiated between the two group types. And they could have backed up. I feel like it was, at least in my personal opinion, the native group came up, were trying to, do their chants and stuff, and even maybe came in to try and like quell some of the possible argumentation between the two groups who were already prior in that area. And then suddenly that's where all of the main footage is focused, is once that native group came in to try and do whatever song they were doing. Some people said it was a song of healing or this and that. Well, Nathan Phillips himself presented it as some moving story, and
I don't know if it was a healing song.
I think everybody was.
I don't know that language.
I think everybody was misrepresented. Yeah, I don't either. Like, I think everyone in that situation was misrepresented 100%.
Absolutely.
Like,
where is the outrage towards the media? I mean, the fact that this got mainstream coverage with these massive spins on it, and you just say, where were they? Like, they completely butchered this story. You mentioned, David, that now that we have all the videos together, it's probably intentionally misrepresented. But what, did they think this was never going to get out? Did they think Twitter didn't exist? They got
the story and the narrative out first.
Yep.
So
right.
now any other person having any other opinion or looking at the data in any other way is going to get shouted down by the two main groups that they want to be the loudest.
Well, and
it's revealing that they're trusting that we will believe them instead of our own eyes.
Yep.
Like,
and they're already doing damage control.
Astonishing.
And trying to shore up with a wildly irresponsible headline. I believe it read, "MAGA Boy's Mom Blames Black Muslims for the Confrontation."
When I Google searched it, it was
God.
Completely one-sided. It was completely one-sided. That was one of the first ones that I saw, that headline right there. And it was all completely one-sided with
well, apparently there was a group that consisted of that, of them already trying to start problems with the group of high school kids. One African-American high school kid was harassed by the other group for even being in that group of high school kids there. And the kids started doing their chant as a way to get out of it, I guess. That's what people are saying. I don't know. There's word of mouth, little interviews and accounts all over the place. But most importantly, there's a lot of videos.
Who is really at fault? If the media is at fault, and that's who should be focused on, and the government, who is the one who gives these permits and make sure that all of this is good. They made all of this happen. They orchestrated every bit of it.
Yep.
Well, one of the camera angles, if you're watching them, there's a guy behind that the Native American protester the entire time. I mean, he's recording behind his back.
Mm-hmm.
He's a professional protester. He records beginning to end when the guy, I guess, like you said, it's up for interpretation, but goes into the crowd, starts banging the face. I mean, this was not one of those, I accidentally misconstrued it. This was butchered. This was just butchered by the media, and I guess intentionally, and I guess really an in your face. I mean, anything short of like a wholehearted apology, I would never use these new networks again.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people already get their news more from podcasts and social media than they do from these big network news sources anyway. But I mean, this should be the final straw. Get them out. No one should watch any of their anchors ever again.
Absolutely.
If they knew what they were doing and they made this something that it totally wasn't, they screwed over people on the left and right by making up these stories. It's ridiculous. I mean, I can't believe, and here's why I'm so mad about it. I don't have any reporters. I work for a news network, but we don't have journalists and reporters, right? I guess we're our own journalists. So I have to rely on their type of information. So the reason I had these 208 messages is because we're like, can you believe this happened? Can you believe they said this? Can you believe how bad this was? And then by the end of the day, we're like, oh, I guess none of that was actually true.
Yep.
But I have to rely on them. I don't have my own network.
Yeah.
I don't have a guy out there. So like, what do? I either ignore the situation entirely, or I have to read Fox's thing and I'm like, oh, I hope they told the truth, or CNN's thing and say, well, hopefully they got to
read all of the things and try to make your best, approximation of all the data you just received from analyzing all that information.
And if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to do your own research, don't even get into it. That's probably the best place you could go. It's funny because a lot of the people sticking to the media's narrative of, MAGA hat bad, and they did this horrible thing, are citing it, and this is in the anarchist circles I'm seeing, with super far left and mainstream sources that generally would be laughed out of the conversation if they're using it as a source. But it fits what they want to see. And that's the problem. Media is good at that.
It's confirmation bias.
Yep.
Confirmation bias is rampant everywhere right now, and it is so irritating.
And that's something that we need to reject. Like, I think the nice part about our point of view is we reject utopianism. So we accept that bad things will happen. It's how we respond to them. And so we're not looking necessarily for confirmation bias to say nothing bad will ever happen in our world. We're looking more for like the response and how it gets picked up in our world, in our ideal world. Now, we don't get a lot of examples of that because there's not many anarchies floating around. But I think that the reason the confirmation bias is so important to these people is because they say, oh, in my world, none of this bad stuff would ever happen. Sure. I can tell you that from having been a Republican for a while, like at least until I started going to college. It was like, well, guys, let's admit that Iraq was a bad idea. No, that was a good war, But but Obama's wars are all bad though.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like, yeah, confirmation bias. By the way, National Association of Broadcasters it's on the top 20 of people that buy out politicians, and they're the guys who require you to be credentialed to be an official one of those journalists. So, in case you're wondering that, in case you were thinking the state had nothing to do with this problem, no, they're part of the problem because they're licensed and we're not.
The state is always part of the problem.
Yep. If you were thinking that, think again, suckers. All right. Well, we're coming up on 2 hours, and so I think we're going to call it here. But that was great. That was one of the best conversations we've had on here thus far. Going over what we've learned today, I want to say, got to be kind. That's always number one. Be kind. Find common ground. And work together. And don't take anything from the media and the government at face value. Do your own research. What do you guys think?
I think you hit the nail on the head.
All of the above, completely agree. I guess to wrap up everything, I just, again, really appreciate you guys standing by me. And I'm so glad that we still get to have these discussions. I loved the last one the last podcast we had, I told people that might have been my best one, and I hate that it wasn't on my own network. But
it was great.
But you should listen to it anyway. Yeah, we just had had a good time. I feel like this was a great discussion as well, and just keep getting those ideas out there. Definitely be open to talking with people, and maybe even if you don't want to change all of your techniques, maybe embrace multiple techniques to say, oh, maybe some people need the hate and maybe some people need the love, and maybe just be really good about deciding when it's time to spit fire and when it's time to spit some love, and talking to people that way. And keep your sense of humor, keep fun, do what makes you, whatever's working for you, whatever makes you a successful part of this movement. I think that's more important than me telling you anything specifically that you can do. Is if you're doing what God made you to do, or what the forces out there have made you to do, whatever you're good at doing, please lend it in a positive way to this movement, because that's the only way we are going to get rid of the state.
So what is that? Like, be kind, rewind. Be kind to the person in conversation and rewind the conversation to understand their position.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. All right, dudes. We'll catch you next time.